Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Lawbogadas with your co-hosts Connie Pena and Missy Duarte. We are two lawyers, Latinas moms on a mission to bring awareness and perspective about the issues that are important to you. I'm Connie Pena. I'm a licensed attorney in the state of Florida. My office is in the Tri-County area where I practice family law and family-based immigration, helping families and individuals transition into new phases of their lives.
And I am Missy Duarte. I am a licensed attorney in the state of New Jersey and Florida, with my office being located in Hackensack, New Jersey, and I specialize in personal injury law, where I represent victims of accidents.
So follow us. Our handle on all platforms is Lawbogadas. You can catch up with our latest episodes anytime on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere. You can slide into our DMs on Instagram. You can also email us at info@lawbogadas.com. So we're back for another episode, so appropriately titled, No se habla español. Missy, why don't you kick us off? Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so a bilingual employee from Erath County in Texas resigned from her position after she was given an English only letter by her boss to sign. Apparently, she is obviously a bilingual employee, and she was speaking to other employees in Spanish, and some coworkers were complaining about that. So her boss, who is actually the tax assessor for the county, came over to her and basically had a meeting with her, and she gave her a letter that basically said, I'm going to read part of the letter. In order to facilitate an efficient and harmonious work environment, all employees shall speak only the English language in limited circumstances. So obviously,
It didn't also say something about that you should only be speaking what I guess you would call non-English if you're translating for a customer, something like that.
Yes. So obviously that set, the proverbial, she started having she got very upset. She was angry, frustrated, and she ultimately resigned from her job. And this, has been in the news recently. And, here we are talking about this. And we're talking about this happened in Texas.
I mean, like to me, while this would be a problem anywhere, it's just like a joke now that it's in Texas of all places. And I think that we looked it up and it's like west of Dallas, right?
Yeah.
Texas, a border state with Mexico, where there's one of the highest populations of Spanish speaking people in this country. What is happening, right? What's the purpose of this?
There's not enough work at the tax assessor office, maybe.
Clearly. So there's a couple issues here. And one of them is, employment law, this kind of public office versus being a private office, First Amendment issues. We have the issue of, is this enforceable? Can your employer enforce this kind of memorandum, regarding languages that you speak, the resulting work environment? What does this do for us? The monolingual versus bilingual or multilingual employees, and how this is supposed to be America, which unfortunately more recently we hear this is America, and then wanting you to bring it back to something that you could perhaps perceive as being negative versus this is America, the melting pot where we have people from all types of places and backgrounds. So, Missy, in terms of the employment law aspect of it, and again, for those listening, neither Missy nor myself, we do not practice employment law, but we are employers and we do have a sense of these things. What do you want to mention specifically about that?
I mean, it's difficult, right? Like for somebody who doesn't, although I own a business per se, I keep learning so much about employment law, and it's just so interesting how these issues still, are very hot in this particular area. And like you said, I practice in New Jersey. I practice personal injury. You're in Florida. You're in a very niche area of like family law and immigration law, where you're kind of, blending that and welding that together. So none of this is meant to be legal advice for anybody. I kind of go back to that whole issue of like, that smell test when something doesn't feel or sound right or smell right. Definitely, would invite a conversation with speaking with your local council about something like that. Or, are there employment issues?
Right.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I'm just thinking about from the employment law perspective, like, can you really do this? So my question is, if this is a public office, right? Can an employer limit an employee's ability or speech? Can they limit the
Right.
speech? So
Right.
there's issues with that. Did you think about that issue?
Yeah,
Topic.
I mean, because this is a public office, like it said. And
Mhm.
so for I know that this is something that a lot of people misconstrue a lot, this First Amendment issue, like I have my rights, First Amendment. Yes, you do. But certain rights are not something that you can sue or whatever you want to do against private actors. So private office, such as my own, versus a government office, we have different rules, different things that are enforceable and different things that are not. So, in the general sense, while I cannot discriminate, of course, against anyone because that's a different type of statute or law, you can technically be fired for kind of any reason. Florida is an at-will employment state, right? Um, but this is a little different when you're limiting speech in a public office, right?
Yeah, and just I'm thinking about my note about, the smell test. I'd say that to employers too. Like, before you start issuing these memos, talk to your counsel. Like, is this even something that I can
Am I
feasibly do?
allowed to do this? Please stop putting things in writing, right? That
Right.
before checking to see if you can even do it.
Please consult with your counsel, like, before you start just
But you know what,
issuing these
Missy?
memos.
Remember our first episode, with the text from a partner at an employment law firm
Right.
to an employee slash former employee, right?
Right.
When people are hot and something is bothering them, they want to go send texts, they want to issue memorandums, they want to post things on the internet, and they don't go consult. So, what is legal advice? Go get legal advice. that's
Correct.
that's my legal advice, right?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, kind of related to this employment law issue is the enforceability factor, right? Can this kind of memo or request be enforced? Can you be fired for violating it? Now, in our case, you resigned, but what do you think about that?
I just I'm just having a whole hard time with this entire issue because I think this whole topic, this whole thing is an absolute scene for no reason. Like, the woman was hired to be a bilingual employee at this office.
Right.
And I get it, like, she's doing a job. She's there to do, provide services for a certain population, and she's providing access to the people that need this, which is great. And we're facilitating that. I'm like, how are you doing this? Like,
Right.
where do you get the nerve that you think that you can do this to people? Because I'll
Well,
tell you from, like, my personal experience, I speak Spanglish. Like, there are times where I'm in my office. If I'm speaking to I have Spanish speaking clients. Obviously, I'm speaking Spanish to them, or I'll be speaking with an employee and I'm speaking Spanish to them, but I'm not like, on the back end, I'm not talking about anybody, but that's just because of who I am, because I'm Dominican American, because of the way that I was raised. This is just something I naturally do. So I just this whole thing makes me hot because I'm like, where do you get off basically telling somebody that they cannot express who they are if that's who they are?
right. And I think the whole enforceability of it kind of is the typical attorney answer that I give is it
It
depends,
depends.
right?
Right.
Because you can be fired for not being a team player and not following, office policies because you're not really a fit here. But when it something that is starting to draw a line of just to be discriminatory, right? And that's where there is a fine line of is this enforceable or not? Because if I have a no Mohawks policy, that's not really a protected class for
Mm,
discrimination purposes. So I can fire you for not following that policy. But this is not the same. This
no.
is not the same at all. And it can tread on that. Again, depending on the facts and circumstances of the situation. Now, I think that I'm going to say funniest part because it's not funny, but the funniest part about this memorandum situation is that it's about being a harmonious work environment. But that's not the effect that it has, right?
No, I mean, I think this is a perfect transition from the fact or the question of whether it can be enforceable, because now, you are not creating a harmonious work environment. Like, you were doing the complete opposite. You are creating a completely hostile work environment. If I was presented this, by my employer, like, I would have done this same exact thing. Like, how do you expect me to come back? There's no way.
Right. And this is, again, someone who speaks Spanish to her colleagues, to her friends. I'm not allowed to speak to my friends the way I want to speak to them on my lunch break, even though I'm still in the office. Like, you are effectively making me feel like I cannot be myself.
Right.
Ergo, I am not welcome. Right. Because, there is this, I think that's something that you and I have talked about, this idea that sometimes we choose not to speak Spanish in certain situations for different reasons. Other times we're doing it just because it's natural for us, right? And again, we as who we are have to do mental gymnastics about what I say and who I say it in front of and blah, blah, blah. But, I don't think that this is at all an appropriate way to handle something. And it speaks volumes of the place that's there and the kind of employer that they want to be, right? They may want to put, quote unquote, the brown lady at the front of the picture to say that we embrace diversity and we're able to help people and customers and clients of all backgrounds. But we only want you to do that on the front end, not on the back end, because that's not who we are here, right?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm getting is that there are some coworkers that perhaps felt like left out or excluded, or perhaps they felt like maybe, how we all think when you go, not how we all think, but sometimes it crosses your mind, like, are they talking about me?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And my thing with that is, like,
People get talked about all the time in one language.
I was gonna say, I was like, one, I think that you're respectfully, like, you really are a little bit full of yourself if that's how you feel about a situation. I don't do it on purpose. I mean, I am cognizant of a situation, so sometimes I am very intentional in not speaking Spanish in front of certain people because I don't want them to get that impression, and I also don't want them to feel excluded. But I also don't think it's fair to then, the inverse, to make me feel like I can't express who I am as a Dominican American because you somehow feel like left out or excluded. So now I have to, like, minimize myself, dim my shine, because you're having, like, you feel some type of way. You're having feelings.
You're having feelings that are completely more likely than not supported by anything objective, right?
Correct.
Because I think you're right. I mean, if I'm having coffee with two friends, three of us speak English, but only two of us are bilingual, I'm obviously not going to start speaking Spanish and leave out my third friend. That would be stupid, right? Yeah. That's not very friendly of me.
Rude.
Right. That would just be rude. It makes no sense. Nobody would ever do that. Right. But if I'm having my own conversation in my own space on my own time with someone that I'm choosing to have a conversation with, why does anybody around me have the right to control what I say and what I'm doing? Now, of course, there are always limitations. Like I said, at work, if I have a policy of, like, if you're, out there being racist and making these kinds of comments, you're not welcome in my workplace. Right. But here we're not talking about anything. Nobody has said anything about this woman is being offensive. They just don't want her to speak Spanish at all. No. Right. It's
only when needed.
Right. Only when needed, which goes into this whole monolingual versus bilingual employees, right? Bilingual preferred, bilingual a plus, right? Especially somewhere like Texas, wouldn't you agree? But but we want you to do it when we say it's appropriate,
Right. Well,
right?
you turn it on when you, I mean, I would not make it there. I don't even think I would make it a day because I'm telling you, I just look like I represent Spanish speaking clients. You do as well. We have employees that speak Spanish. So there's times where I'm directing a client. I'm not, excuse me, not a client. I'm talking to an employee about a certain client or certain case and what needs to be worked up. And I just happen to be speaking in Spanish, not because I feel like, and I'm on the main floor. People can hear me. And I'm not doing it because I'm trying to like talk smack about anybody. That's just how my brain is wired. So like that's where I'm at in the moment. Like I'm speaking in Spanish and then I'll catch myself at times and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was just giving her like the work order and I'll try to clarify so that way people know what's going on. But I really wouldn't even make it in a place in an environment like that.
Right.
Absolutely.
And let's not forget that people that speak Spanish look all kinds of ways, right? Because I know that I remember from just being younger, being at Publix, just like the grocery store down here for anyone who's not listening, who's not from Florida, saying, be careful. You never know who speaks Spanish. Like if I was doing it for that reason, right?
Right.
You do never know. So, um, but again, it goes to where you are. And like I said, I think it's even more unfunnily hilarious that this is in Texas, right? And going along with this employment side of it, the monolingual versus the bilingual employee, it's going back into this box, who you are, identity kind of situation we've talked about before. But there's also this, we all know that being bilingual is a plus. It's an extra line on your resume, but people rarely get paid more for that fact, right?
Right.
And so it's now an issue where I have to put out that I'm bilingual because it's a plus for me. I can help your clients that don't speak English, or maybe they do speak English. I have many clients who have hired me not because they don't speak English, but
Right.
because for certain things they really want to be seen and felt understood,
Right.
and they want to do that in their own language,
Right.
not because they need an interpreter.
Right.
And so it goes very much to culture and understanding the dynamics in the home, especially because I'm dealing with family law. It goes very much to that. Does it mean that it's for another reason? And so this result of we speak English here, is very much like an abuse of one of the reasons why you probably hired me, right?
Right. I honestly, I just keep scathing about this. This makes me like more and more upset as we discuss it. There's just like rage about it. I'm like, how you wanted me because of this particular skill, right? I am here. I'm performing my job. And because, somebody on, a specific situation has a problem with me articulating myself and using said skill, even if it's on, I'm not translating for, a client or somebody that comes into the office needing help or resources, like that's a problem.
Right. It's, when you translate, ironically, I'm using the word translate, when you translate this into other areas, you know, are with like the whole, I don't know, Gen Z, would there be a memorandum that says don't use colloquial terms that non-Gen Zers don't understand? You're not allowed to say things like, the vibe or whatever words are being used that people that are, they're not cool. Like every generation has a certain lingo and things that are said, and it's absurd. It would be absurd to make a memorandum like that, right? But when we have this kind of situation, I guarantee, just like this employer, there are many people that don't think it's absurd at all.
No.
And why? Why do they think that? Because we speak English here. Right?
I'm shaking my head still. I'm like there's fumes like coming out of the side of my ears. Like it's just ridiculous. I just go back to thinking about certain folks and they're like, hey, like this is America. We speak English here. I'm like, no, this is yes, this is America, but this is America, the melting pot, right? Like the Spanish population at some point, like, isn't they did some census, right? Like, what is the population in the US?
Growing the fastest. Yeah.
Yes, Spanish or the Latino community in the United States is the fastest growing population, and at some point is going to progressively become like the majority population. More and more, I'm finding, especially in my area, I have clients that like you mentioned earlier, the ability to relate. And part of that is me understanding the culture, hablando nuestro idioma, right? Like you're speaking that language and you're having that relatability. I'm just having like, is there a line? Like, can an employer limit one's ability to like express themselves, express who they are? And I've never really questioned that until like this topic came up, because I always felt free to do that. And it kills me that this woman has been put in this position. And it kills me that I'm sure other people have been put in this position where they literally are like shamed for having the very skill that they were hired, the very same reason that they were hired.
Right. I mean, I think that this is a problem that transcends just being, Latino, Latina, that transcends the language factor, because obviously when things start affecting us is when we notice it more. That's just reality of human beings. It doesn't mean we're not somehow aware or cannot empathize with people going through situations that we don't know. That's something that I think we need more of, is empathy. But can an employer do is, when you're saying that, this brings me back to other minorities of things that are experienced under this facade of the harmonious work environment. When we're talking about expressing ourselves, when it has to do with identity and not just with preferences, right? Kind of how there have been articles and things about hair. What kind of hair is appropriate, right? I used the mohawk example before, but we do know that there is, for African Americans, this hair issue that people have found themselves being told how to style themselves, right? We have these stereotypes in our culture on TV and other things about what does a Latina look like, that I have to be very loud, that I have to wear a lot of big jewelry maybe, or like these other images that I'm just like thinking of, like, Modern Family, Sofia Vergara. I mean, I wouldn't mind looking like Sofia Vergara, but that's a different issue. But it's the look and the way of being, and being loud and being fire and being these stereotypes. And, again, with the enforceability, there's a line, right? There's a line of what's work appropriate clothes for a law firm versus working at a shoe store, to limiting how people are allowed to communicate and express their actual true identity and their backgrounds.
Right.
And what you said about the melting pot, it brings us back to this, what we've talked about in other episodes, right? About the box, about our identities, about who we are, about where we're welcome, where we're not. And that sometimes this starts to happen. We're all one, we're all kumbayaing until we're not. So, Missy, as an employer, let me ask you this. How would you handle an employee or multiple employees coming to you saying they're bothered by Spanish-speaking individuals in the office?
I mean, I would just sit down and have a conversation with them to gain a better understanding of what the situation is. Like, when is this occurring? Are we talking about they're at lunch? Is it during the workday? What's going on? Why are you so enthralled? Is it becoming a distraction? Right? Like, are they speaking loud enough? Is it distracting to, the person, the complainant, if you will?
What's the real reason? What's the problem?
I need facts, right? Like anything. Like, so, you put your little detective hat on, as we all do, and just try to get to the bottom of it and see what it is. Is it becoming a distraction? And have a conversation about it with that person. And perhaps have a conversation with, the people that are being complained about, just to, this is what's going on. It's not, I don't want anybody, I don't ever want anybody to feel like they're limited in terms of how they perform their job. If it's becoming a distraction, then obviously that needs to be addressed. Like I see that as some like a proper grounds to, you know, just have a discussion with an employee about it. And then you're like, okay, well, you know, you guys are getting a little loud and it's kind of impeding on everybody's ability to work. So I think that's how I would address it. I would have a conversation, get a better understanding of when this is occurring, and then have a conversation with the other party to kind of also get their side about what's going on and why this is happening. And then from there, figure out how to handle it. And you're like, are you circling back to the, like, this is what's going on? I don't ever want anybody to feel excluded.
On either side.
Right. Like, I don't ever want anybody to feel like somebody's talking about them, but I also need you to do your work, number one. Two, like, I don't want anybody to feel like they can't express themselves, but like anything, there's a time and a place, right? So I don't know what exactly, you know, we're very limited. The story just came out not too long ago. So we're very limited on the facts. That's how I think I would go about it. What about you, Connie? Would you have this?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think like with any complaint, right? I think with any complaint is what is the real issue here, right? Because it could be there could be a situation where this has nothing to do with language and it's all about the attitude, right? Mm-hmm. Because people can create hostile work environments without speaking any other language, right? Mm-hmm. You know, is this a situation where when you go up to this colleague to say, hey, you haven't done XYZ, I'm here to follow up on this. And there's like, see, madam, and there's just like a little Spanish comment as you walk away. Well, you're clearly, it doesn't matter what language you're speaking. You're being rude. You're not being, you know, team player, quote unquote, right? Like, yeah. How are we interacting with each other? But there also shouldn't be someone who is just, well, I don't want to hear them speak Spanish when it is in no way affecting my life or my ability to do my work, right? So I think we've talked about this in other episodes. Communication is really important.
Right.
It's so important.
And again, this is one of those times where I'm like, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for somebody to, I don't want to say do the right thing, but this could have been a learning experience for everybody. Because it sounds like this employee didn't even know that this letter was coming. She had no idea that there were even complaints being made about her and like what she was doing. So I think it was a missed opportunity by the tax assessor to kind of get a better understanding of it. Because hello, Texas, like it kills me. I'm like, this literally borders Mexico. Probably one of the highest like Latino populations. This right. particular state. You hired this woman to be bilingual, and I just think that
you still want her to be bilingual.
Yes, but it's like it's this thing like the fact that you think that people that are bilingual, trilingual, however, because Connie, I know that you speak like 4 languages, however many languages that you speak, the fact that you think that there's an on and off switch to that is so offensive to me. I think that's the part that makes me the most upset. Like the for anybody that is monolingual, that only speaks one language, that only speaks English, it is not that easy. There are so many studies when it comes to like how we're wired and people that speak different languages. It is not an on-off switch. Like, it's not like I just put on my costume and I'm like, hello, my baby.
That's exactly what it is. It's like, it's not some talent I'm here to showcase for correct. You when you feel that it's appropriate and beneficial for you. That's my problem with it. Is convenient. Exactly what you said. Is the costume. It's not, I'm not here to be like, oh, look at this employee I got here. Look what she can do. She can speak Spanish. Okay, now go and don't do it again until I tell you.
Right, like close the door. Put her
right. It's just you know, we're talking about who we are, our identity, right? And this can go into other topics because we are two Latinas, moms, lawyers. Every hat we put on has a layer of an identity and something that comes along with it, right? I can't help but cross-examine my husband when we argue. It's just who I am. You know, don't ask me to turn that off because I can't.
Poor Leo. Leave Leo alone.
But you know, this is again where we have a line. Being a lawyer is not an innate trait of who I am as a person. I mean, there are a lot of things maybe of who I am, of why I chose this path, but asking people to diminish who they are or hide who they are for your convenience, which makes no sense as it is. It makes no sense. It just, if I go to a Chinese restaurant, am I going to ask the staff or the people who are in charge or working that they're not allowed to speak Chinese because I don't speak it?
Well, you're
No,
present,
because
right?
I am present and I am somehow, this goes into a superiority issue. What is better, right? Which one is better? Which
Yeah.
one is allowed? Which one is not? Which one is a little too much? And it's unfortunate. So I think like with every topic, Missy, we can talk about this for a really long time.
We can.
And again, this is something that is a very specific incident. Like you have received a memo telling you, do not speak Spanish until I tell you.
Right.
And what do you do in these situations? For
Yeah.
purposes of our listeners, what is there kind of like a closing message or something that you wanna say about this that we haven't touched on?
No, I mean, no, it just goes back to ultimately the first point. You know, if you have a question about something like this, like talk to somebody, speak to a professional, get help. This isn't in any way, shape, or form meant to be legal advice because I'm in New Jersey and I practice personal injury. You're in Florida, you practice family law, immigration. I just love how that, like, the marriage of your practice, by the way. But we have very specific practices, and although we are business owners, right? We're not necessarily, I wouldn't characterize myself as specializing in employment law, especially in Texas. I'm not barred in, neither one of us is
Right.
barred in Texas. So the takeaway is, if you have a question, contact a professional. Contact a professional. It from the employer perspective and the employee perspective. Like, let's all exercise a little bit of pause. Is another takeaway
Don't be so
before
reactive.
yeah,
Yeah.
before you pull the trigger, just like take a breath, man. Like, take a breath. There's just so much going on in the world, especially like, I don't want to say post pandemic because it's, COVID is and will forever be here. But now that, COVID has been introduced and this is very much like a way of life, I feel like ever since then, people are just that much, there's a lot more stress in the world. It's very just confrontational at times. I think
Yeah,
everyone's very stressed out, and I think we all just need to take a minute and breathe.
I agree.
So yeah, I mean, thanks everybody for joining. I mean, I'm so sorry, Connie. Do you have any takeaways? So rude.
I mean, I agree with you, and again with breathing, I think social media is a big problem today,
Mm,
in that people are way too obsessed about what other people are doing. Um, and something I find myself saying all the time is, why do you care? Why do you care? In every sense of the word. Like as it relates to this, why do you care what other people are speaking? People
right.
will talk about you in any language they want. They don't need to speak another language to make fun of you, right? And then if they are making fun of you, why do you care? Why do you care? How does this affect? Why are you going to let that affect your life to this
Yeah,
in this way where you have to go to an employer and make a complaint to get a memorandum done? Can we just can we just let people live their lives and stop being so preoccupied with what other people are doing when it literally has no effect on you?
right. I mean, take out that, stop being so presumptuous.
Right.
Like, we're not, I don't know where this paranoia sets in, where people think that, like, you don't even know what they're talking about. Like, did you even ask, like, what were you guys talking about? Even then, there was an opportunity for the two employees to have like a little bit of a conversation about this. Like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to like be offensive or in any way, but like, I kind of feel left out. Like, if it's whatever, like, have a conversation about it. Communication.
My
Communication
gosh.
goes a long way.
Be a little lighter in everything that we're doing. Yeah. Like let's stop taking everything so seriously and personally. And a lot of people have forgotten how to communicate, Missy. And I think
Mm,
it's not just like how you're saying pandemic. I think it's just a general problem that we're having because If you feel like you're being left out, or you can all, there's an easy way to make jokes about things, but to be serious, kind of like when we text each other and we say LOL after something that's serious.
Right.
That works in real life. You can say to people, oh my gosh, you guys are always speaking Spanish. I always think that you're talking about me.
Right.
Open the door to that. And, but stop being so just, why do you care? Everybody move on. Everybody live their life. And let's stop doing things where it makes people go to their bosses or feel like they have to quit their place of employment
Yeah. I mean, try
over
not to,
something that it wasn't an issue until you made it one.
yeah, and understand it from the other person's perspective. It is not an on-off switch. Like I can't put on the hat and take off the hat and all of a sudden like I'm only speaking English.
Yep.
That's not how our brains are wired. And honestly, like especially for somebody like me, I'm constantly switching back and forth between the languages. And a lot of times I'm communicating in Spanglish. Like I'll start the sentence in English and I'm just changing it up. And I'm not doing it because I'm being offensive. I'm not doing it because I'm trying to exclude anybody, but it's me. And that's what makes me me.
Right. Right.
So, what did you think about this episode, guys? Thank you again for joining us today. What did you think? What were your thoughts? Follow us on all social media platforms at Lawbogadas. We are on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Send us a DM on IG or feel free to email us at info@lawbogadas.com. Have you experienced this issue? You or somebody that you know? Do you have another perspective about this particular issue that maybe we haven't thought about or discussed? And what other topics do you want to, hear us talk about or highlight more? So just want to thank everybody again for joining us today for another episode of Lawbogadas, and I hope to catch you on the next one.
Thank
Bye.
you, Missy.
Yep.
Bye.